Ms. Jatanya Kandari, Deputy CIO of Solutions and Multi-Asset at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. Solutions are very important, so congratulations on that. I wonder what your take is on this AI race, because all of a sudden the narrative is shifting from a monopoly story to an open ecosystem. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I think the markets are the best parameter, right? So if you look at year to date, in the Mega 7, only 2 out of the Mega 7 have outperformed the S&P. So the market's been very discerning, and I think that's the way forward, because you have a lot of these issues as, you know, within the AI chain, whether it's like raising debt to fund CapEx, the whole circular funding, and hitting constraints on electricity and power. So you really have to be discerning at this stage of the AI cycle and move beyond just the picks and shovels and the providers of the new technology to the adopters and the users of this technology, which means more industry-wide usage and how companies will harness the power of AI to improve their efficiencies and their profitability.
It does feel, though, that on the other side of more efficient and profitability, that is slow. We had a guest on who was a spinoff from IBM, basically saying that a bunch of companies are stuck in pilot purgatory. I was speaking to Ed El-Husseini, a Threadneedle earlier, who said that the promise of some of these efficiencies hasn't fully come to bear, and it won't fully come to bear. The trade that goes beyond AI and the use of AI for companies, how long does that take? And is that as clear-cut as maybe we once assumed?
Yeah, you know, I think in every past tech innovation, the productivity gains always have come with a lag. So I don't think this time is going to be different. And I know, you know, there are two schools of thought. One is that the usage and the uptake has been very slow. And another one that is, yes, you know, it's pilot stage. The delta of change is positive. So I do think that, you know, I see it personally. I feel much more productive with using some of the you know, AI tools today. And I think over time, some industries will adopt faster. And I think incumbency has an advantage here. So in industry verticals where companies have already an existing moat, they may be able to even expand their moat and harness the AI potential to really drive efficiency. So you really need to look outside the typical tech names in healthcare, in retail, in e-commerce, in music, in digital platforms. And we find a lot of opportunities all over the world that we think will really be able to do well in this new environment with this new resource.
We recently saw a new Porsche Cayenne, an electric version. Stick with me.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I will set up the simulcast for X Spaces shortly here. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can follow me on Substack, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, TikTok, X, and GETTR. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. All these videos are for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. Please help support the work by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Just go to the homepage. The links are there for you to donate. Please help support the work that I do. All this is for free. In addition, you can be a paid member to my Patreon and Substack channel. Again, all the videos and all the content is for free, but by being a paid member, you're helping support the channel. I greatly appreciate it. I think it's important for the news coverage to be open sourced and to give an opinion of how the financial markets are happening and how to benefit from it or how to navigate through the tumultuous times. I think that should be for free. So please help support the work by donating. I also have great products on my website. I have ebooks talking about artificial intelligence, endocrinology, also about finance, and genomics. So please take a look at those. In addition, I have great supplements, very high quality, that if you stack them the way I tell you to stack them, you will slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system and get healthy. It's a holistic approach. It works. This is something that I've been doing for a very long time. Now, I also have course material on immunology and pulmonology that you can learn from. Lots of videos, lots of PDFs, only for $50. You get a unique password. You log in as many times as you want. You learn at your own pace, and you learn how your respiratory system works, and you learn about how your immune system works. And this way, you're learning how the body functions, and you're reducing that power dynamic between your physician and yourself. See, when you go in and see a physician, usually the patient doesn't know much about how the body works. And unfortunately, some of these physicians can take advantage of that. It's important to reduce that power dynamic, reduce that gap, and know about how your body functions. And that way, you would have been able to navigate through the 2020 crisis much better and ask the right questions. That's the reason why it's so important to go to my website and learn the material. All right, so thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get some of the great supplements. Before we start going over the news, I'm just going to talk about a couple products here. Get the Cleanse, it's 30 parts per million, or Max 35, which is 35 parts per million. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. Swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, then swallow it. This will help the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, which is the back of your throat. Maintain the mucosal barrier, help the health of your epithelial cells. This is super important to boost up your immune system. In addition, if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well during, let's say, the fall or winter season, take a tablespoon or two each day until it's all clear, and then go back to your maintenance dose, which is a teaspoon. But do it every day, super important. And when you're boosting up your immune system, you're slowing down the aging process, because more often that you're sick, the faster you age, all right? So that's a real important concept to understand. And please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is super important for your immune system, but also for your cardiovascular health and for your ability to build denser bone. All right, how it works. Vitamin D3 is a cofactor for gene expression. So your cells will perform better. When your cells are infected, they need to go into apoptosis, but sometimes an infected cell overrides the apoptosis pathway. Vitamin D3 gets it back into that apoptosis pathway so it dies off. That's how you clear an infection, is you get rid of the cells that are infected. So vitamin D3 is super important for that. Also, vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. When you do resistance training, it'll help you to build denser bone. Vitamin D3's efficacy increases when you take magnesium. I have magnesium supplements that you should also take. In addition, vitamin D3 will help the cardiovascular health, because if you couple this with K2, the MK7 molecule, then what will happen is that it will help to pull some of that calcium depositing around plaque at the vascular level and reduce further calcium depositing. So it's really important to take vitamin D3 every day, super important. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. With that, let's go to the news. All right, markets are open, and the S&P 500, for the ones that are watching on YouTube, you can see the dashboard. I have a dashboard. The markets, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,704. VIX is trading at 20.24. Now, VIX was trading at around 25. It has been going down. I would like to see it below 19. The Japanese yen is trading at 156.19. So international stress is fine. There's not too much international stress. Usually if there's international stress in the markets, the Japanese yen will start to appreciate. Right now it's depreciating. So that's one of my risk indicators. If it's below 145, you got to start worrying. But it's at 156, so you don't have any worries. VIX in the 20s, we already had the 25 spike. Now it's coming back down. On some of my videos, I've been saying that this is heteroscedastic. It comes up and then comes back down, and the periodicity is usually every 2.5 months. Sometimes it's a month periodicity, and sometimes it's a 3-month periodicity. But usually, you know, it comes in a periodic period. Now, what you got to do is look at these periods that it spikes, the heteroscedastic signal that takes place. And you got to take a look at the spike max. Is it climbing from one spike to the new spike, or is it declining? And if it's declining, the stress is slowly coming out of the market. If it's slowly growing, then there is going to be a larger event. If you start seeing spikes that are, let's say, going from 15 to 20, and then 2.5 months later from, you know, a calm period of, let's say, 18, and it goes to 25, there's a higher probability in the next spike, let's say 2.5 months after that you may hit 35. So that's how you start to manage risk, all right? By not only knowing the periodicity, but also, is it a declining periodicity or an increasing periodicity for the max of that spike? So right now, it seems to be declining. This is the reason why I think that the S&P 500 is at will be at 6,850 to maybe 6,900. It's possible by year end to be at 7,000, but that probability is starting to diminish. You know, we only have about 4 weeks left of real trading for the year. So I think it's going to be closer to 6,900. But the headwinds are anything that comes out of the White House dealing negatively about tariffs, some sort of war spike that might take place. We may see a little bit of a market sell-off if we hit Venezuela, or something happens in the Middle East, or something happens with Taiwan, or further escalation. But I don't think it'll escalate in Ukraine. I think it's just pretty much going back and forth, but I don't think there's really an escalation. Do I think that there's going to be a peace agreement anytime soon in Ukraine between the Ukrainians and the Russians? No, I don't think so. I think they'll fall apart, because I think they had a 28-point plan or a 26-point plan, and then it turned into a 19-point plan, and Zelensky's flying to see Trump to talk about, you know, his perspective. Nothing's going to happen. You know, I don't think any peace agreement in Ukraine anytime soon. But those are some of the headwinds. But I think there's a high probability of getting to 6,850 to 6,900 by year end. Now, Bitcoin is trading at 86,500 right now. I personally think the Bitcoin market is manipulated. There's not enough liquidity. I don't think there's enough individuals that are buying the coin, a full coin, because they don't have the capital. And yes, you can buy fractions of a coin, but that's not going to move the needle. I don't think there's enough. There's a lot of institutions that started wrapping ETFs with Bitcoin. And so the way it's set up is that they would buy Bitcoin. Well, the last sell-off, many people have left those ETFs. So if you're leaving the ETF, even if Bitcoin is going up, the funds aren't there really to be major purchasers. So who are the major whales buying this stuff? Well, it's not the retail investor because they don't really have the capital. The institutions through ETFs is starting to dwindle because their funds are starting to have outflows. So it's whales like Strategy or, you know, early adopters of buying Bitcoin or mining Bitcoin that may be purchasing, but I just don't feel that it's a liquid market. It's kind of similar to how homes are. It takes a while to sell your home, usually, all right? And you really don't know what the price is. It can be a lot less because it depends on how many buyers you may have, what's going on in the economy, what's going on in your neighborhood, right? You can't, in a stock that's publicly traded, you can buy and sell easily because you're going to a broker, your online broker or whatever. You're going to a middleman or, you know, some sort of broker, and you can do this transaction very quickly within seconds. But when you try to sell your home, it may take months, sometimes years, sometimes days, but you don't know. It's not as liquid. A home is not liquid. It's not a liquid asset. Now, Bitcoin is better in terms of liquidity than a home, but there's also a lot of volatility. You don't know what the price is, right? Because you do have clearinghouses. So you can transact with your coin quickly and close out, and right? But the thing is that there are big whales that are moving the market. So they could do a sell-off, it goes down, and then they buy again. And because these whales can manipulate the market, this is what I mean by it's very volatile, and there's not a real liquidity in that asset class. I thought that what would happen with Bitcoin is the liquidity would improve with the ETF wrappers. That's not what's happening. So 86, could it go up to 100? Yeah. Some people are saying it's bouncing off the channel. There's a channel, there's an upper channel and a low. There's a channel that this thing's been oscillating in. And when that big sell-off happened, it hit that channel and now it's bouncing up. The thing here is that you're starting to hear a lot of negative news about people closing their accounts with JP Morgan, with Bitcoin, certain whales with Bitcoin are being forced to close their account with JP Morgan. I don't know all the details, I really don't care. But the thing is that you have accounts either voluntarily being closed by the client of JP Morgan or forced accounts being closed by JP Morgan because of know your customer regulations. Now, you have that issue. You have Strategy or MicroStrategy. You have Strategy that's a major whale. And if it continues to sell off their stock, if people continue to short it, they're going to be forced to sell their Bitcoin. When they start selling their Bitcoin, even if they titrate it in, that means there's more supply of Bitcoin on the market. The price is going to drop. So it's an unstable asset. Now, people that are young, they haven't learned, they don't know their history, they haven't gone through a Lehman crash, they didn't go through dot-com bubble, they didn't go through, really understand the dynamics of the COVID era of trading, right? So a lot of young people, they think that it's just going to go to the moon. Well, you're missing a major point here. What country would abrogate their authority of minting their own currency? There would be a war that would happen before that happens. So this idea that it's going to be decentralized and you're going to be able to get rid of central banks and all that, it's all BS. It's never going to happen. Now, will there be a digital dollar on something like a blockchain? Yeah, absolutely. And the Federal Reserve is going to control it. So you don't really need Bitcoin. So it's really a asset that's really a virtual asset that has high volatility that people trade. So it's more like gambling than actually a store of value. Store of value, you can't have a store of value for a currency like let's say Bitcoin. If someone's using Bitcoin to store value, you can't because it's volatile. Just a couple weeks ago, it was 100 and some, 100 plus, 104, 105. Wasn't that long ago where it was 122,000. Now it's at 86,000. That's not a store of value. Currencies don't fluctuate that much. And that's the reason why certain currencies are better stores of values than others, because of exchange rate issues and the economy of a country and all this. But if someone's saying that for a store of value, that Bitcoin is safe, they don't know what they're talking about. It's not a store of value. Could it appreciate? Yes, just like any other high beta stock. Now, Bitcoin also seems to be tied into the stability of the equity market, especially with the Mag 7. If the Mag 7 starts to falter with an AI bubble burst, then institutions and portfolios are going to need cash. They are going to shed their high beta positions. And Bitcoin's going to be one of them. So I'd be very careful on what you do with Bitcoin. It's not a liquid market. It's manipulated by whales. The ETF wrappers are not working properly. They're getting a lot of tracking error. And I've been watching this for a while now, all right? It's not safe. The problem with MicroStrategies potentially could go bankrupt. That doesn't mean they're going to go bankrupt tomorrow, but if you have another major sell-off, what happens if Bitcoin, if people are like going, okay, it's sold off, now we're going to buy, it's going to hit to 100, now we're going to short it again. If you take a look at a fib sequence on Bitcoin, the support level was, I said, this was just a few videos ago. I said a support level of 82,000. The next support level is 61,000. All right. Well, it bounced off of that, and now it's moving up a little bit. But it's not stable. What happens if there's another sell-off in the equity market? What happens with what's going on in the news with NVIDIA? A lot of people are positioned in NVIDIA. What happens if NVIDIA starts to go down because of the move that's going on with TPUs, with Google? Portfolios are going to start hurting, and they're going to start shedding potentially their Bitcoin assets. Bitcoin is not moving in a vacuum. All right. And that's something that you have to pay attention to. So some people will they're all in and they're, all right, fine, great. Hope everything works out for you. But the fundamentals aren't there. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't go up, because a bubble can continue on and on and on until it doesn't, right? But if you're looking at it from a fundamental point of view, that it's going to supersede central banks, how's it going to supersede central banks when the treasury departments of different countries are the ones that actually mint their coin? Secondly, it's highly volatile. So if you're going to use Bitcoin as a store of value and for transaction, how are you going to transact when you don't know what the value of the coin that you're paying with, what that value is when you're buying a good or a service? Because it fluctuates so much. It could hurt the consumer. They're paying more because of the currency devaluing, or they could be paying less because the currency is appreciating. But if its currency is appreciating, it's hurting the actual seller because it's at a certain price. It's at a certain price at a certain time, right? And no one's going to be selling a good that is going to be tracking Bitcoin in real time, where the price is changing of a good or service in real time, people don't buy that way. So if you're going to have such volatility with Bitcoin, wait a minute here, how are you going to actually transact? It doesn't work. This is the reason why. If Bitcoin isn't stable in its price, it can't be used for transaction. On top of countries mint their own coins, but countries can control their own money supply. So the economics, just from standard monetary theory, it just doesn't work. Now, could it be a high beta play as an asset class, an exotic asset class? Yes, absolutely. But don't think that it's going to supersede currency. It just doesn't make sense. And if it made sense, why isn't it more liquid? Because it's all whales. Now, there's going to be a lot of whales that are going to be very wealthy, but that boat already sailed. So I think that going into Bitcoin is very dangerous. The fundamentals aren't there economically. It's not a store of value. It's very volatile. It's a manipulated market with whales, and the ETF wrappers are not working. All right. With that, let's listen to MS Now dealing with some economic data.
When do we really see the engine of the economy start to take off?
Well, some of it's already started, Sean, but some of it is going to take a long time because we inherited a disaster. We inherited the highest peacetime debt and deficits in the history of the United States of America. We inherited the worst inflation crisis in at least the last 40 years, and I think probably longer. I know that there are a lot of people out there, Sean, who are saying things are expensive. And we have to remember they're expensive because we inherited this terrible inflation crisis from the Biden administration. But we've already seen.
No, that was true. I mean, they did inherit an inflation crisis. It was bad policy by the Federal Reserve. Because if you remember, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department wasn't paying attention to the inflation data, and they thought it was transitory during the COVID crisis. In addition, we've had a 20-year never-ending war in the Middle East that cost us trillions of dollars. That wasn't effective. We had a major bailout with Lehman that's still on the balance sheet of many central banks. And then we had to pump in tons of liquidity into the market because of the COVID era. And if you look at the major shoot up of debt, those are the three events. Post 9/11 war, Lehman, and COVID.
Signs that things are getting better. The price of eggs has gone way down. The price of energy has gone way down. The price of gasoline has gone way down. And as we know, when the price...
The reason why price of eggs are down is because we're killing less chickens because we're past the bird flu issue. The reason why oil and gasoline are lower is because Trump basically said, hey, wait a minute here. Saudi Arabia, help us with bringing down the oil prices. And we'll do some deals. We'll sell you some weapons. We'll help build up your society post fossil fuel. We'll do some business. All right, Mr. President.
Energy goes down, that starts to filter out into the entire economy, but that also takes a little bit of time.
Vice President J.D. Vance, Fox News, earlier this month, blaming the Biden administration for the country's current economic issues, particularly on affordability. But a recent Fox News poll shows almost 2/3 of voters surveyed say President Trump is responsible now for America's economy. Join us now, former Treasury official, Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner.
Is Trump responsible for the economy right now? He's the one steering the ship. Everything that happens in war, in the economy, whatever, he's got to deal with. He's got to he has to right the ship, move it in the right direction. If he doesn't, it's his own damn fault. I don't really care what happened in the past. I want the debt to go down. I want the inflation to go down. I want economic prosperity. I want better economic clustering in the United States. Bring back manufacturing. This is the thing that I don't like about Trump, is he whined in his administration. They whine about the reasons for things. Just fix it. Just fix it.
With his charts on the state of the
This
economy.
is a triumphant return
Look at this.
Yeah.
for Steve Ladner,
Yes.
the New York Times bill.
Yes, the prodigal son returns. Steve,
I like
you
your
worked here, what, 45, 50 years ago?
I started here almost exactly 50 years ago.
Wow.
50 years and a couple months ago, I came here as a cub reporter.
That's so
covering-
cool.
Covering Metro, down on the third floor.
For the New York Times.
For the New York Times.
This is old New York Times
New York
building,
Times.
and you were here, and you worked on the same floor as Willie's dad.
Yeah.
I worked on the same
Oh,
floor as
yeah.
Willie's dad, and when I was 23 years old, and it was a cool experience. You came in, you typed your copy on an old-fashioned typewriter. You yelled copy, and somebody came and got it, but you could only submit it one page at a time, so
Oh
you
my
couldn't go back and
God.
change anything. And then it got set in type on the fourth floor, which was the composing room, in what we call hot type, the little line of type machines. Then I went down to the basement and got printed on presses down in the basement. Meanwhile, we would finish our stories around 6:30 or something like that because we had a deadline. Wasn't a 24-hour newspaper. And then we'd go downstairs out the back door, go to Sardi's, hang out at the bar.
Now we get to the good
Hang
part.
out at the bar for a couple hours, and then we'd come back up around 9 o'clock and get the first edition so we could see our names in print. And we could see what the editors had done to our stories, because you never got to see your stories again once they sent them up to be edited. And that
Wow.
was New York back in the 70s.
Yeah,
Those were the
that's-
olden
the New York
days.
Times is so cool. In the basement of this building, it's where they printed the
Isn't that
papers,
amazing?
and it would come up. And the papers would come up.
Yeah.
How things have
Look,
changed.
my dad took the job. He worked at the Suburban Trib in Chicago.
Right.
Took a job to write the About New York column for the New York Times when I was 5 years old. In 1980, he first walked through those same doors that we've been coming in now for the last week or so. This is pretty special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the doors were quite different. Quite different back then. But if you ever watch this great old New York movie, The Sweet Smell of Success, it opens, which is about a Walter Winchell kind of character in New York. It opens, the opening scene is the press trucks coming out the back door of the New York Times from the papers that were put on it in the basement.
Wow.
So cool.
Well, after we do
Okay.
these charts, let's go out the back door and go to Sardi's.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right,
We
Steve,
are officially relics.
let's talk about this economy with your first chart, starting with the weak labor market. What are you seeing there?
Well, the point I'm making is that Vance can say that they inherited a bad economy, but the problem is the economy is actually getting worse, not better. You can inherit a bad economy, then you're supposed to do stuff to make it better, and virtually every statistic shows it's in fact worse under Trump than it was under Biden in his last year.
So let me give you, all right, this is a news announcement that just came out. NVIDIA shares fall about 6%, erasing more than $240 billion in market value. This is just off of the news of the TPUs being used from Google. Now you got to remember, portfolios are managed, all right? They have different stocks in them. Now, if you have certain portfolios that are heavily weighting, let's say NVIDIA and not Alphabet, and you have, let's say, 10% of the portfolio to add some juice with Bitcoin, and it adds and there's volatility in Bitcoin. See my point? There may be another market sell. Bitcoin doesn't move in a vacuum. People need to pay attention to this. I've been trading for a very, very long time. I've been trading financial markets for, when you compare to some of these younger people that are playing Bitcoin, before they were even born. So, you know, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot in the last 30 years of looking at the financial markets. And you know, these 20-year-olds that are trading, they don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand what they're doing. They weren't even born. So some of them weren't even born when 9/11 happened. And they barely could remember what happened during Lehman. And another thing, retail is going down. Abercrombie shares, oh no, Abercrombie went up. Never mind. No, Abercrombie went up. Retail data actually came in worse. I'll have to research this a little bit more. So, but the point here with NVIDIA is that what happens with the Mag 7 is going to affect the equity market. And it's going to affect certain portfolios depending on where they're weighted in that Mag 7. And a lot of these portfolios have spiced it up with Bitcoin. Be careful. I'm telling you, be careful. Doesn't move in a vacuum. All right, back to the economy. The real economy.
Take a look, for example, at payrolls growth. You can see under Biden, we averaged about 170,000 jobs a month. And under Trump, it's dropped to something like 77,000 jobs per month. And so we're actually going the wrong way. And if you read any story, look at any statistic, any survey, and there was a big one in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, everybody is talking about how this is one of the worst job markets since the Great Recession, especially for young people.
What's driving that, especially for young people who, I'm telling you, this is such a growing crisis. Young people in college, at great universities, even at great universities, getting out to no jobs. What's going on there, and what is making the labor market so weak right now?
I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is. The combination of issues. All right? Because I see it all the time in New York. What does a person that actually gets out of college, 4-year degree, undergrad, know? They don't know anything. Oh, they're going to go and work in, they don't know anything. Compared to a person that has 3 years experience, 5 years experience, or 10 years experience. There's so many 3 to 10 year experience individuals that people don't need these entry-level college grads. That's one issue. They don't know anything. 2, there's too much of a supply of people that are already experienced. 3, AI is starting to be implemented in certain jobs where entry-level positions aren't required. Another issue is that the skills, a lot of the students, even coming from elite universities, they don't have the skills to actually translate to what is needed in the workforce. They got a lot of humanity degrees, gender studies, English majors. Now, I'm not saying that a liberal arts education is bad, but don't assume that you're going to get a high-paying job. And last, college now is a high school diploma. So if you want to get anywhere, you got to have at least a graduate degree just to open up the door. Now let's see what the economist has to say.
9.2% unemployment rate among people 20 to 24 who are looking for jobs. And I think there's a couple of factors. You have to say that AI is a piece of this. I don't know how big of a piece of it. A lot of it is because of all the uncertainty under Trump. The tariffs are on, the tariffs are off. We don't really know. Companies are just cutting back. They're just becoming leaner. The economy is slower, as I'll talk about in a minute. And so they don't need as many people. And they've just really started to reduce their hiring in a dramatic way for these various reasons, from worries about the economy, AI, and so forth.
All right, let's take a look at your second chart, and that is affordability and growth challenges. This is The issue, President Trump has called the affordability crisis a hoax, a con job, but then rolling back tariffs to address just that affordability.
Well, again, affordability comes down in a large part to economic growth. You have to have economic growth in order for people to have more income and therefore to be able to buy more stuff. And economic growth is also going the wrong way. You can see under Biden, it averaged 2.4% in his last year, and it was steady upward. Under Trump, it's bounced around, but it's going to average only 2% this year. And even the 2% that Trump is going to get is heavily driven by all this AI spending on data centers that you've been reading about and talking about, which obviously have nothing to do with him. And so the economy is in fact slowing, not growing faster, and a downward trend in the fourth quarter could be down here in the 1 to 1.5% range. And then you also hear when you talk about affordability about housing. And so housing starts, which is what we need more housing, obviously, for people to be able to afford them, have dropped. And you can see what they did under Biden, and you can see down here under Trump, they are lower. And so we're building fewer houses. And so Vance can talk all he wants about inheriting a bad economy, but what you have to be able to do is then make the economy go the right way, even from whatever you get, rather than going the wrong way. And right now, it is going the wrong way, and especially on jobs and affordability.
All right, in your third chart, Steve, we're looking at inflation, which has been persistent in part because of the tariffs.
Exactly. And so again, they talk about inflation, and they talk about, and he said it in that clip about he inherited the worst inflation in 50 years and all that kind of stuff. It was 3% when he inherited.
Inflation, in part by tariffs. Maybe if you take the full basket of goods that have been imported, maybe a third of the price has gone up. A third of let me rephrase it. A third of the tariff has been absorbed into the consumer price. If you look at the total basket of goods that are being imported. So if the tariff is $100, only $33 has increased for a good. All right. Now, if you look at certain sectors or certain types of goods, it may have gone up more than 1/3. In some cases, it's less than 1/3. But on average, it's about 1/3. All right. Now, with that, because you got to remember, when you're looking at the retail price, it's not just the retail price, but are people buying at the sale price? And what's that delta? Because there's lots of discounts that are happening right now with retail. And retail is down. Retail is down relative to expectations. It went up 0.2%. It was supposed to be at 0.4%. I think that's month over month. Now, inflation is too high. It needs to be at the 2% target. But we're still feeling the effects of the fiscal stimulus from the COVID crisis, and the failed policy of the Federal Reserve by not raising rates when they noticed that inflation wasn't transitory. Instead of cutting rates in Biden's era, what they did during the Biden's era is that they cut rates. Then they were staying even. Then they ended up noticing that inflation was happening. They raised the rate, didn't raise the rate fast enough, so they didn't use shock therapy. They raised it slowly, which was wrong. And they did that after they realized that they made a mistake and realized that inflation was not transitory. And then once the job market was starting to falter, then they started lowering the rates. They should have kept the rate steady because they didn't do shock therapy. So they made a mistake, and they weren't able to drive inflation down fast enough during the Biden administration. I know why they did that, because they didn't want to affect the outcome of the election. Because if they raised the rate fast enough, it would bring prices back down and cause a recession, which was what needed to happen. But they didn't do that. They didn't do it. So what we're doing is we're feeling the effects of this elevated inflation when they misread the data by Janet Yellen and Chairman Powell and the Federal Reserve Board. They didn't raise rates fast enough to push down inflation. And so we're feeling the effect. So if you didn't want to push the economy into a recession under Biden, and you just raise rates slowly, and eventually you start cutting them when they should not have been cutting them when the inflation rate was above 2%. So there shouldn't have been any cutting that was taking place under the Biden administration. None, zero. Should have been only going up or steady, but not down. So by bringing it down and not doing shock therapy when they needed to, we're feeling the aftershock of that. Now, that's hard to explain to a stupid populace. The populace only understands like immediacy. They don't understand the lagged effect of policies, especially if there's a 2-year lag. But what the Federal Reserve did under Biden's administration by misreading inflation, when they did notice that it wasn't transitory, they rose the rate too slowly, and then they started to bring it back down to prevent a recession. And the reality of the situation was they should have shock therapied it and had rates really high and then bring them down fast. They weren't willing to do that. They wanted to staircase it. They think that they can just like manage it really. They needed to shock it. But we're still feeling the effects because people think that you can manage an economy. You can just manage the money supply. You can just keep on creating fiscal stimulus and easy money, and you'll just ease the pain. But the reality is that you might be easing the pain, but you're not solving the problem. And you're just prolonging the suffering. See, if they did the shock therapy, if a recession happened under the Biden administration, we would be in an upcycle now. But what we're doing is we're slowly landing down with the economy because of this high inflation that we had during the Biden administration. And inflation is still too damn high. And the Federal Reserve is getting pushback from Wall Street to lower the rates. The average citizen is in debt, so they want the rates lower. They don't realize by lowering the rate, you're increasing the inflation problem. And that's the reason what's happening. This is an aftershock of COVID. This is the financial aftershock of COVID. Just like there was a financial aftershock right after Lehman and the mismanagement of the economy. It took years to recover the economy. Years. And I would say that we're still in the effects of Lehman.
Less than 3%. And what's happened here is inflation did start to go down under Trump, but then you had the tariffs, and now it's back up to 3%. And that puts pressure on the Fed's ability to cut interest rates. In comparison, Goldman Sachs, before Trump got here,
now let's look at that chart for a second. Let's look at this chart for a second. All right, it's maybe a little hard to see on the screen, but this part is Biden. This part is Trump. Okay, and what you normally have is up and down, and we're talking about a scale for Biden anywhere from 2.5 CPI inflation annualized to 3.5, and this is between January 2020, they're only showing one year of data for Biden, not 4 years of data. But the reality is that it goes up and down, right? It goes up in January, it comes back down in July, and then it comes back up in January and comes back down. It's going back up and it should be coming back down soon. But the point here is if you wanted to be honest, he would show what the periodicity of these spikes are for the 4 years of Biden. He didn't. He only showed the last year of his administration. So he's cherry picking the data. it's always going to have this up and down, up and down. And what was the reason why it went from 2.5 to the 3 under Biden from July to January? Why? He automatically assumes that the jump from 2.5 to 3 is tariff. We didn't have tariff in July of 2024 to January of 2025. We didn't have tariffs there, but it went up from 2.5 to 3 for CPI. Well, go to April 2nd to July data. July, August, I don't know what his data set here is. So let's just say it's September data set, whatever it is. But, from what caused this jump up? Because there's a natural periodicity of oscillating between 2.5 and 3. Why does he automatically assume that it has to be the tariff? It could be just the natural economy fluctuation. And it would be shown with the data set showing 4 years of Biden. What about showing also the 4 years of Trump? Why don't you show a larger data set to see this periodicity? Because he's cherry picking. Why did he cut the data right at January 24? Because he didn't want to show the high CPI inflation rate of the Biden administration in 2022 and 2023, where we had a problem. Cherry picking the fucking data.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Well, inflation will be down to 2.2% at this point. And in fact, because of the tariffs and everything else Trump has done, it's back up to 3% and growing at the moment. And all of that put together.
Goldman Sachs projection. He's using a Goldman Sachs projection at 11 in November of 2024. Really? When I was managing a portfolio, and we had some people come into one of our investment board meetings, and to try to improve the portfolio performance. And we listened to these people from Goldman Sachs. They were total idiots, total fucking idiots. Do not trust people from Goldman, and do not trust people from McKinsey. They're idiots. Now, look at this. Look at this. The Goldman's projection, all right, they were basically saying, well, there's going to be, with the Federal Reserve lowering rates, that, and inflation is going to come down, that, let me rephrase that. Goldman was basically thinking that as we recover out of COVID and the economy starts to become more robust, the inflation will start to go down. And they were probably also seeing that Trump was probably going to win, because this was in November 1st. So the election didn't happen yet. And so they were probably thinking Trump will probably win. The economy, you'll have this activity in the economy because of Trump, and therefore inflation will start to go down. That's probably how they made their model. All right, but the reality is that their model doesn't show the periodicity of the spiking that's taking place. If you take a look at a longer data set, you're going to see these spikes that happen. Goldman showed that their projection was like, well, it's going to go to 2, and then it's going to come back up to 2.5. So they did show a spike, but then it's just going to stabilize at 2.5. So it's inflation data, CPI data. I don't think it just oscillates so tightly at the 2.5 range. It's ranging from 2.5 to 3, 2.5 to 3, 2.5 to 3. But there's a periodicity. So my point here is that he doesn't know for sure that it's a tariff, because you have the same periodicity that's taking place in July of 2024. We didn't have any tariffs then. Once again, this is a classic example that Goldman Sachs doesn't know what they're doing. They're not projecting properly. And the thing is that if they kept on projecting that the Federal Reserve was going to lower rates and you're above 2% inflation target, don't you think that's going to be inflationary? I mean, standard economic theory says that. Maybe Goldman Sachs doesn't know standard economic theory. I don't know.
Has created this incredibly pessimistic mood among people where consumer sentiment now is down all the way down here. It is down, in fact.
Okay. So now his data set is now showing 20 for the consumer sentiment. 2018. All right. So it's so convenient to bring that data. He's covering Trump's administration and then all of Biden's and then Trump's administration. But why didn't he show the CPI the same way? Oh, because he's cherry picking. He's cherry picking the data. All right. So here in 2018 to 2019, before the COVID era, we were bouncing around 100 to 95, right? Maybe in some points in time, even 90. So everyone was positive. We had a very strong economy. If you were paying attention, before COVID, America was doing pretty damn good. And COVID happened, and it dropped down to just above 70, and then it started to inch back up after the election, and it's coming back up. And then it came up to just below 90, and then it came back down, and inflation spiked and we had a consumer sentiment of 50, and then it started to come back up under Biden's administration. So we had a huge drop post-COVID from 2021, post the COVID 2020 crisis, right? Because COVID had been in multiple years. So during, let me just rephrase it. During the 2021 to 2022 era, which coincides with different waves from COVID, it went from 90 to 50. And then it started to inch back up, and it spiked back up under the Biden administration to 80 for consumer confidence. And then it started to come back down again. And then Trump gets elected, and it's been, since Trump's election, the consumer confidence has gone down. So at this moment in time, we are at the peak of inflation during the Biden administration in terms of consumer confidence. Well, wait a minute here. The inflation is nowhere near, the inflation is like 3.1, 2.9 to 3.1 annualized. So, well, wait a minute here. You compare that to what was peak inflation during Biden, and some of the numbers are like double digits, like 11%, some depending on when you're looking at it, but it was like 8, 9%. Some data was saying 11. So whatever it was, but it was a hell of a lot higher. Even like, just give Biden the benefit of the doubt, and it was 8%. 8 is a lot higher than 3% or 3.1% or 2.9%. So something more fundamental is happening here. Something more fundamental. Part of this may be Trump orange man bad syndrome. Another issue is that the tariff war, even though the price hasn't fully been absorbed in the products, and it's only roughly a third, people are starting to get worried about their jobs. And that's because of AI. That's because of, businesses aren't hiring. So there's a different mood in the economy. All right. Now, Trump is on the watch, and he needs to pay attention, and he needs to fix the problem. And he needs to bring that up. Is the consumer sentiment too low for Trump? Absolutely. It's a major problem. I think this may be the reason why Trump is slowly positioning himself during that news conference to align with some of the policies of Mondani. Because who supports Mondani in New York? Individuals that are having a hard time affording life, affording their home, affording groceries. And if you don't handle this consumer sentiment number, Trump is going to have problems in the midterm election. But you have to remember, we're nowhere near the inflation spike that happened under the Biden administration. So the recovery should be better.
Down to levels of the great financial crisis.
Oh my
In
God.
terms of how people feel about this economy. They are unbelievably negative about this economy. And so, as I said, Vance can talk all he wants, but if it had gotten better, we've now almost a full year into the Trump administration. If it had gotten better, you'd think people would start to recognize that and feel that. It doesn't show up in the numbers, and it doesn't show up in what people are telling pollsters and so forth about how they feel.
I got to shout that last chart.
Yeah.
He looked like he was dancing to Otis Day the Night Animal. A little bit lower now.
Yes.
A little bit lower now.
He
touched his toes. It's a morning exercise. You see that?
Dancing is not.
Is not here.
Okay, let's listen into Trump moves to preserve Xi truce while reassuring ally Japan.
If you're reading the book, then you know that Xi Jinping has made
Before we do that, let me just plug a couple products here. Please help support the work that I do. I do these videos for free, and I want you to get the products that I have on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, to get healthy, to slow down the aging process and to boost up your immune system. I have a very great product for your skin, which is the structural nano silver soap. You can get it in lemongrass, charcoal tea tree, also in peppermint and in lavender. Very high quality structural nano silver soap. This helps the health of your skin. And it helps support the work I do. So please help support and get a few bars for your household, and you can use them as gifts too. It's the holiday season's coming. Also, ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can purchase. There's nothing better in terms of CoQ10 than what I offer on my store. Ubiquinol, again, is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10. Most people that take CoQ10, you're taking the wrong kind. So please go to my store, get the ubiquinol. This will soak up free radicals, help the health of your mitochondria, and you'll have more energy. Your cells will perform better and protect your neurons. This is super important, especially if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. Please go to my store and get the ubiquinol. An olive leaf extract, dual purpose. It's going to bring down inflammation and help your lipid profile. By doing that, you're reducing plaque formation at the vascular level, and you're helping your immune system. So take this every day, boost up that immune system, and help with your cardiovascular system. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
changes to China's military over the past 13 years since he came into power. He's reorganized it. Certainly, he's reshuffled the top Chinese military. He's modeled it in many cases on the U.S. Joint structure. And he's certainly increased and advanced China's military hardware capabilities. So he's transformed. He's been a transformative military leader. That being said, of course, we've also watched these purges of the senior military leadership, most recently at the fourth plenum. And it's very unclear, the readiness of the Chinese military, certainly at the top, to take any kind of military action moving forward. So just the constant roiling of the senior Chinese military leadership, I think, is a real challenge for for Xi Jinping and the party leadership.
Liz, Paul Sweeney brought this up brilliantly this morning. The basic idea is we all have a perspective of Taiwan. And maybe it's Chiang Kai-shek and Mrs. Chiang Kai-shek coming to Washington, and then on to this and Nixon and Kissinger and all that. Is this a fulcrum point where Taiwan is actually under threat?
Look, there's no doubt
Yes.
that Taiwan is under threat, and over the past several years, the rhetoric out of Beijing and the sort of the military activity around Taiwan, the air flights, the sort of crossings of the Taiwan Strait over the median line have only increased. And I think what we saw, just over the past few weeks was Prime Minister of Japan, Takaichi, when she said that if China were to take military action against Taiwan, Japan could be forced itself to take some sort of military action, that China came out very hot and said Japan had crossed a red line, and that it started the banning, boycotting Japanese seafood, Japanese films, etc. And so I think there's no doubt, Xi Jinping has said he wants the Chinese military to be prepared to take action by 2027. That doesn't mean that they're going to launch any kind of military invasion in 2027. He's just put that down as a marker for when he would want the military to be prepared to take Taiwan. So I'll just say I was in mainland China, just came back Saturday, and one of the things that our delegation heard was from a retired senior foreign policy official that China is not prepared to wait 200 years, that it is prepared to take any form of military action. So I think the heat is it's only getting hotter for Taiwan at this point.
Elizabeth, President Trump
And this is the reason why. This is the reason why that America needs to pay attention to what China's saying. They're telegraphing they're going to take Taiwan. Is America going to defend it or not? Now, I'm worried that Trump won't defend Taiwan because he chickens out. I'm worried about it because I think that Trump isn't paying attention to the importance of making sure that we have hegemonic projection in Asia. Not only that, if Taiwan goes, so do some of the other smaller islands that affects Japan. It's going to affect the Philippines. It's going to affect the freedom of navigation through the 9-dash line. And I'm not sure if Trump is smart enough to really understand that a failed policy with not defending Taiwan is going to heavily affect the United States. Now, what probably will happen is that whoever the next president is that's when the actual kinetic event takes place. But why doesn't Trump make the kinetic event happen now? Because China's weak. Because he wants a Nobel Peace Prize. He'd rather have a Nobel Peace Prize than actually have hegemonic projection of the Pacific. Now, do you think that we have this amazing economy and stability for our country because we have hegemonic projection or because we don't have hegemonic projection? I mean, you have to pay attention here. If we lose it, we're going to lose the viability of our own economy. And this is lessons learned during wars with Greece and the fall of Greece. It's also dealing with the wars of Rome and the fall of Rome. You have to maintain your hegemonic projection. Now, America first. The reality of the situation is America first as long as you're maintaining your hegemonic power. America first and being a pacifist, America first and only dealing with domestic issues is going to lead to the destruction of America. And so a domestic policy of an America first agenda is going to make America last. America first is going to make America last. Why? Because most of the people that are for America First are pacifists. They want to be insular.
Again, having discussions on trade. What's the perception within China of President Trump, this administration, and maybe the policies as it relates to China?
I think, look, that there's still a sense within China that President Trump can be very unpredictable. They see some openings with President Trump, and I think the recent phone call that was initiated by Xi Jinping is evidence that, Xi Jinping wanted to send a message about Taiwan, certainly, that Taiwan is part of China and doesn't want the United States to wade into this, Japan, mainland China brouhaha. But I think he was also probing to see whether President Trump might be willing to do something on Taiwan, especially in the wake of this, U.S.-Russia negotiation over Ukraine and that initial peace plan that they put forth.
I am extremely worried that Trump is not smart enough about this, how to deal with Taiwan. He's going to fall into the same trap that Kissinger set up back in the 1960s. The reality of the situation is that there is a globalist agenda to have Taiwan be subsumed by China. But when you do that, it's also going to affect an international relations imbalance in the Pacific. South Korea is going to be on guard. The Australians are going to be on guard. New Zealand will be on guard. The Philippines will be on guard. Japan will be on guard. And some of these countries are going to have a high probability of losing some territory or freedom of navigation in the seaway. Because China thinks that they are the big dog. Now, why do we allow that to happen? Are we going to let Trump allow for China to be the big dog or not? Are we going to allow the CCP with their communism or one-party rule, top-down government, be the victor here? That's the issue that I have with Trump. He'll pick peace even though it's going to be harming the United States. Hitting Venezuela is no big deal. No big deal. Even hitting Iran was no big deal. Going after China, that's a real war. And Trump's not going to do it because he's a chicken.
President Xi could discuss on Taiwan when they meet in April. So I think, the perception in China is that President Trump is a deal maker, that he's willing to put everything on the table and to trade things in and out. And so I think that's what they're looking to assess now.
Do you believe, from the U.S. perspective, that putting things on the table would include Taiwan? Do we have any indication that President Trump would consider that?
I think there's always concern when it comes to President Trump's commitment to Taiwan. He's never come out and said that Taiwan is a very valuable partner for the United States. He's been critical of Taiwan on some fronts. I think what we do know is that Secretary Rubio and Secretary Hegseth have been very strong in their support of Taiwan, very strong in their commitment to our Indo-Pacific allies and partners, and to sort of a continued U.S. dominant presence in the Indo-Pacific, in the security space. So, it's unclear. I think we've seen a fracturing to some extent of this administration on the Russia issue. It's not impossible that we have a similar fracturing on the Taiwan-China issue.
Elizabeth Economy with us, an extended conversation, of course, with the Hoover Institution and Stanford University. Margaret Patel, Chris Whalen coming up, and later we'll be looking at the gambling.
And then some people will say, well, if we don't go to war with China, people will be safe and all this. First of all, if they take over the technology in Taiwan, that's going to hurt us militarily. Secondly, we're going to lose our hegemonic power, and we're going to lose the freedom of navigation in the seaway around the 9-dash line.
But we have to really pay attention here. American citizens have been living too high on the hog. They've been living in this relative peace, free from real conflict. I think it's time for American citizens to actually pay the price of freedom.
America. Dr. Economy, the world according to China, your must read. You say, rewriting the rules of the game. My China 101, also learned at the altar of Elizabeth Economy, is that presidents have a 4-year window, an 8-year window. China has a 20, 30-year x-axis. Rewriting the rules of the game, one of your chapters here. Does President Xi, has he shortened the China exit, or are they playing the long game each and every day?
He's certainly playing the long game, as you say, each and every day. And, they continue to invest in all the resources and capabilities that they need to, win the game over to 2035 to 2049. And you see this in all the targets and timetables that they put forth, for example, and, how they're going to achieve global technology dominance. But it also plays out across, a range of areas, whether we're talking about the Arctic or space or deep seabed mining or de-dollarizing the global economy. They're constantly putting, markers out for the future, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out. What do they want to achieve? How are they going to get there? They have a long-term vision and a long-term strategy to achieve that vision. So this is the long game. And, Xi Jinping doesn't see himself exiting anytime soon. So I think we can count on at least another 5-year term beginning in 2027 for Xi Jinping. And after that, I imagine he'll still want to, at least be in the background, guiding the next leaders of China.
Save on new appliances at Best Buy.
Unbelievable. I'll tell you, I'm worried about Trump. Sometimes I think he makes some big errors. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. This is a month supply. Take it every day. And what this will do, by bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body, soaking up those free radicals, you're helping the health of your vascular system. You're boosting up your immune system. You're also helping with your brain function. By bringing down inflammation at the brain level, you're helping the health of your neurons. If you have chronic inflammation on your neurons or around your neurons aren't as healthy and they can degrade. And eventually you start having problems with memory and cognition. So it's important to take this every day. Digestive enzyme complex helps to reduce the load on your pancreas. When you get older, your pancreas doesn't function as well. No matter if you're fit or not. It's important to help the health of your pancreas. Take the digestive enzyme complex. This has the enzymes to break up the carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids and to ease the digestion, reduce the load on the pancreas. That way you can absorb your nutrients. This also has bromelain, which helps to break up clots, and this has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins. That's super important, especially for the fall and the winter season. All right, this is the reason why I said take the digestive enzyme complex in 2020. All right, and you know what happened in 2020. Get the complete multivitamin. This is easy to digest, and with these multivitamins, what will happen is you'll have the cofactors for enzymatic activity. So your enzymes are going to perform better, your cells will perform better. When your cells are performing better, your tissues and organ systems perform better. So this is a foundational supplement. So take this every day to help slow down the aging process. And stack it with a good probiotic. I have a powder version and a VeggieCat version. Take the probiotic every day. That's going to help with your gut biome, help with your immune system at the gut level, improve the communication of your gut and your liver. That's going to improve your metabolism. You're going to be able to absorb your nutrients better. In addition, you're going to have
better communication between your gut and your brain. You'll sleep better. You're going to get rid of that brain fog. You're going to be able to concentrate better. And with proper sleep, you're going to be detoxifying your central nervous system and consolidating memory. Please go to my store, get the multivitamin. It's easy to digest, and the probiotic. C60. C60 will soak up free radicals. This is 1,000 times more potent than a molecule of vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce with the higher ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. What this will do is it's going to soak up free radicals, boost up the health of your mitochondria. You'll have more energy. Your cells are going to perform better. Your organ systems will perform better. You're going to have a more robust immune system, better endocrine system. At the vascular level, you're going to be soaking up free radicals and reducing plaque formation. And at the brain level, you're soaking up free radicals within the neuron. The mitochondria will be healthier. Your neurons need lots of mitochondria. You're going to be able to produce those neurotransmitters, and your neuroplasticity will improve. And that means that you're going to be able to think faster, and you'll have better memory. So please go to my store and get the C60. This will also help with the basal layer of your skin. Within 1 year of taking this every day, teaspoon a day, you compare a before and after picture, you will look younger. It takes 1 year to do this. In addition, by taking this, in about 2 months, you're going to start feeling the effects of a better immune system, better endocrine system. You'll have more energy. And when you just have more vitality. And if you couple it with a holistic approach, filter your water, stay away from processed foods, reduce your sugar intake, do the 4 modalities of exercise: cardio, resistance training, balancing, and stretching. Mindfulness or spirituality to get your nervous system into parasympathetic, so you're well rested. Learning new things, challenge your brain. Proper sleep. When you do these with the proper supplementation, you're going to radically slow down the aging process. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I've been tweaking a protocol and following it since I was 16 years old. Now, most people don't do that for that long. But the thing is that I've been doing this for a very long time. And through the decades, new supplements and new ways to take the supplements and learning the stacking, research coming out of geriatric medicine, research coming out of sports medicine, and understanding the aging process. When you couple that all together, and a lot has been learned over the last 40 years. And it's not just the supplementation, but the stacking and the coupling with this better lifestyle. When you do that, you're going to notice that your body is healing better. You're slowing down the aging process. And if you do happen to start having some issue, you heal faster. So if you want to have if you want more vitality in your geriatric years, less ailment issues, if you want to reduce your costs of healthcare later in life, you need to invest in your body. And you do that by taking the proper supplementation and following a certain protocol. And when you do that, you're just going to have a better life. Now, it's up to you if you want to do that or not. I'm saying this is what you do to get there. It works. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, and get the multivitamin, the probiotic, the digestive enzyme complex, and the heirloom barley. That's a great stack right there to slow down the aging process and boost up that immune system. But not just that, you're helping with your gut biome, you're also helping with your pancreatic health, you're soaking up free radicals and helping with your skin and your immune system, your brain function. It's dual purpose. Please go to my store. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. I want these supplements in your hands. Use them regularly and get healthy. All right. Let's listen into Bloomberg.
Have those premium products, and they're already going to need to offload older inventory with steep discounts. So you sort of have that turnaround compounded with these rising costs heading into the next year. So something for them to work on.
Lindsay, I also want to ask you about Best Buy. The shares are up about 4.5% right now. And of course, this consumer electronics retailer had a beat and raise quarter. It looks pretty good, and it looks like it's on the usual strengths, sales of mobile phones and sales of computer equipment.
Yeah, so Best Buy had a strong third quarter, better than expected, as you mentioned. I think, the stock isn't getting a full bump because there is definitely some conservatism and a low guide for the fourth quarter. And investors are trying to figure out, is it just conservatism? Are they just worried about the consumer, or is there something really there that there's going to be a slowdown in that fourth quarter? But the business looks good. Demand looks strong. As you mentioned, computing, phones, gaming, all looking solid. And they're also seeing an improvement in home theater, which is really big because that has been a weaker category for the last couple of years. So if that comes to fruition, I definitely think there will be strength in the fourth quarter.
So, and you think about a Best Buy, I mean, some of those are big ticket items here, and that would suggest that they're confident. They go to a part of the K-shaped economy maybe that is doing better. Is that a typical Best Buy customer?
So Best Buy, definitely promotions are going to be a big piece of the fourth quarter. They're sort of leaning into those promotional events. That's what worked last year. And I think they're trying to lean into the things that worked last year for this year. And I do think the consumer backdrop is quite similar when we do that compare. They also recently launched a marketplace, and they seem to have a stronger focus on marketing and advertising. And so they're really trying to meet the consumer where they are and make sure that Best Buy is top of mind when you're shopping for a wide array of things, not just those big ticket items like TVs or appliances. So they're trying to have a bigger wallet share with consumers across the board, and they're leaning on that marketplace and advertising to do it, and then hopefully get you into the store, and that's where they can bring their customer service and experience as well.
Did they say anything or give any indication on how they're preparing for Black Friday and for the holiday shopping season?
It sounds like very similar to last year. So they started their deals about a week ago. They roll out new deals each week. They are leaning into their paid membership program. So paid members get access to certain deals or the regular shopper. But the playbook looks very, very similar, but the demand picture looks better. So hopefully those promo events can really draw that shopper in, especially since everyone's already looking for those items.
Lindsay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. As always, Lindsay Dutch, Consumer Hardlines Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. For our listeners in the U.S., a reminder, you can listen to us via satellite radio on SiriusXM Channel 121. Access the world's only global audio business network, coast to coast, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg Radio on SiriusXM Channel 121 is presented by Oracle. Stay tuned for the latest market news and industry research. The next hour of Bloomberg Intelligence starts right now with the S&P up.
All right, let's take a look at some other news. Let's listen into U.S. official says Ukraine agrees to peace proposal as Zelensky says what?
Throw it as hard as you want. Go on. Watching it zip away feels like it might just keep going, right? Nope, here it comes. This thing's a total game.
We are learning from a U.S. official that Ukraine has agreed to a peace proposal to end the war with Russia, saying that only, quote, minor details are outstanding now. The word from Ukraine's President Zelensky is much work still lies ahead. The country's national security chief, though, says its delegation has reached an understanding on the core terms of the deal. There's also word that Zelensky could travel to the United States this month to sign it. But what about Vladimir Putin? Today, U.S. and Russian officials are meeting in Abu Dhabi to discuss the plan. A spokesman for the U.S. Army Secretary, who's leading the delegation, says that those talks are going well and we remain optimistic. While people are clearly talking, the war rages on. Both Ukraine and Russia trading deadly new strikes overnight. Let's get to the White House. Elena Train standing by for us at this hour. With this new development and new reporting from this U.S. official, what are you hearing about this supposed deal?
Yeah, look, this has been a crazy twist and turns to this entire negotiation over the past couple of days, Kate. But I can tell you that the Trump administration and White House officials really want to use the momentum of these recent talks and negotiations to try and see if they can bring this to the finish line. And I think that's part of why you're hearing a lot of these very optimistic and positive statements from key players on the ground. We heard similar, I should note, from Secretary Marco Rubio following those talks in Geneva on Sunday. But I just want to get into what this U.S. official told our colleagues, Oren Lieberman and Natasha Bertrand. They said that Ukraine has agreed to a deal to end the war with Russia. Only minor details remain. They said, quote, the Ukrainians have agreed to the peace deal. There are some minor details to be sorted out, but they have agreed to a peace deal. That is a huge deal. We should just know. I think, like, full stop. That is a huge deal if Ukraine is actually backing this plan. As you mentioned, of course, the big question is whether the Russians could actually stomach a lot of this. Now, this comes as a U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll is in Abu Dhabi. He's meeting with Russian officials today. Of course, the goal there to see how much they can get them to compromise on some of these areas that the Ukrainians seem eager to work on. I will note that Ukraine's National Security Secretary, Rustem Umerov, he wrote about this in a post on X. I want to read this for you because what we're hearing from this U.S. official does seem to go a little bit beyond the position of the Ukrainians. The National Security Secretary said, quote, we now count on the support of our European partners in our further steps. He added that Ukraine looked forward to organizing a visit of Zelensky to the U.S. to, quote, complete final steps and make a deal with President Donald Trump. So look, we have to see where this all comes down to. But again, I want to just reiterate how pretty quick this came together, because I'd remind you last week when details of this plan were initially emerging, at that point it was a 28-point plan that Steve Witkoff, one of the president's top advisors, had been quietly discussing with the Russians. There was a lot of skepticism from Ukraine and also the United States, European allies, about whether or not it was in many ways a wish list for Russia. There were concerns that there were far too many concessions for the Ukrainians, not as many for the Russians, that it was too favorable. Now we're seeing, though, after a lot of these negotiations, particularly those in Geneva, as I mentioned on Sunday, it does appear that they were able to get this, working, we've heard Rubio call this a breathing document, this working deal to a place where the Ukrainians feel confident that they can go as far as this U.S. official is telling CNN today, into agreeing to this deal. So big question now is whether they can take this to the Russians, get the Russians on board. And if that's actually a possibility, this could be a major breakthrough in something that has really been kind of, eluding the president and this administration for months now in their goal to finally find an end to this war between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, would be a major breakthrough for sure.
Before we continue, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Zeolite. Zeolite will get rid of toxins, chemicals, and heavy metals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink the filtered water. Do this daily. And by doing that, you're improving your overall organ systems, improving your immune system, your endocrine system, also your brain function. Detoxifying your body regularly is super important. I have dual purpose deodorants. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. They're dual purpose. You use them as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. And when you detoxify your body regularly, your immune system and endocrine system will perform better. This is made from essential oils from the Himalayas. These deodorants are for males and females. Get a couple bars for your household and help support the work that I do. And for the winter season, make sure that you stock up on the drops that I have. They're structural nanosilver. If you have an irritation in the throat, take them right away to mitigate the problem. You can get them in blueberry, in honey and lemon, and also in cherry flavor. All right? Take them right away if you have that throat irritation. Make sure that you have
some of this at home and at work. You never know when you need it. They're very effective. Please go to my store and get the drops. Now, let's continue with CNN.
The question about what's Russia going to do about it and say about it is also a huge question. Lena, thank you so much for the report. John?
All right, with us now is Senator Jeanne Shaheen, a Democrat from New Hampshire, the ranking member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, what do you make of this? I mean, this is a U.S. official saying that Ukraine has agreed to a proposal. We don't know what proposal, frankly. We don't know if this is a proposal the Russians have agreed to, and we're not even sure how the Ukrainians feel about it other than the comment from the U.S. official. But what questions do you have?
Well, I think it's premature to suggest that there's a final deal, but I understand that good progress was made yesterday in negotiations, and we'll see how the Russians respond to taking some of the items off the table. The original proposal was obviously a Putin wish list for everything they want, including no Ukrainian option for joining NATO, no NATO enlargement in the future, capping the size of Ukraine's military. None of that should be acceptable to the United States, to the Ukrainians, or to the Europeans. So the devil is in the details here. We need to see what kind of security guarantees are being provided to Ukraine, because what we've seen time and again is that Russia makes a commitment. They made a commitment not to go into Georgia. They went into Georgia in 2008. Then they signed the Budapest agreement in the 90s. They said, we won't attack Ukraine and they should give up their nuclear weapons. Well, they've attacked Ukraine now in Crimea. Then they went into Ukraine. So we can't trust what Russia says and what Putin says. So what we need is real security guarantees that are going to ensure that Ukraine is protected, that its sovereignty is protected in the future.
You said progress has been made. I guess specifically progress in what direction? What progress do you think there would need to be for you to support this and really for the Ukrainians to feel comfortable?
Well, again, I think we need to have real security guarantees, as I've said. I think any cap and any ability for Russia to determine how Ukraine's military moves forward is unacceptable. Ukraine right now has the biggest army in Europe. They are the most technologically advanced. We want that army on the Allied side fighting with Europe and the United States in any future conflict. So we need to make sure that that is protected. We need to make sure that Ukraine's sovereignty is protected, that Russia understands that any attempt to go back in Ukraine is not only going to be met with European force, but with United States force. We also know that Russia is arming in a way that doesn't just allow them to go into Ukraine, but allows them to go after NATO countries and Eastern European countries. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future, and there needs to be some accountability. This idea in the original proposal that anybody who committed war crimes would not be held accountable for that, that's not acceptable. We can't allow an aggressor like Vladimir Putin to get away with that, because it then sends a message to China, to Iran, to North Korea, to our other adversaries.
Look, we obviously need to see what is being discussed now. What exactly the plan is that's on the table, we'll find out more presumably over the next few hours. I want to rewind, if I can, 24 hours, because yesterday morning at this time, we were told that the White House might have a plan as soon as yesterday to extend Obamacare subsidies. They even floated some of the details of that plan: a 2-year extension, a cap on subsidies on income levels 700% above the poverty level, some basic required minimums there. I hope you heard this yesterday morning, and if that were the actual plan being discussed, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it was obviously how I used it. Student Pro to manage my student, the day and the life of student. So first, I'm grabbing a coffee to make sure that I'm well fueled for today's task.
Well, I think it's very positive that President Trump is talking about coming to the table to address this issue. There's real urgency to get this done because people are seeing their insurance rates spike dramatically, and with the other affordable affordability crisis that Americans are facing, that's unacceptable because we're going to have millions of Americans lose their health insurance if that goes forward. I think some of the details that have come out about what the president were proposing would have been very good for Democrats. I think Democrats are willing to come to the table. I understood that a number of our Republican colleagues also wanted to get this done. It's in their interest. They understand that this is an issue not just for blue states, but for red states, and that people don't care what party you're in. If they can't afford their health insurance, that means they can't get the health care they need.
So the second part of this question, and why I tried to rewind to yesterday morning, is since yesterday morning, the president in the White House seemed to have backed off. The proposal didn't come yesterday, isn't coming today, at least as far as we know. And the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson basically told the president Republicans won't support this. So what does it tell you that there may not be Republican support for the White House plan?
Well, that's unfortunate. I think if Republicans, they need to recognize that 57% of these premium tax credit recipients are in states that they're in Republican congressional districts, and 76% of them are in states that Donald Trump won in the last election. We've already heard from President Trump's pollsters, but two of whom have said if the Republicans don't come to the table, if they don't address this, they're going to pay at the polls next November. And that's what we're going to see. So it's very short-sighted for Speaker Johnson, for other Republicans to say they're not willing to address this, because the voters are going to hold them accountable, because people can't afford their health insurance. And that has ramifications for people who can't afford their health insurance. It has ramifications for the whole healthcare system as we look at people going to emergency rooms, and the cost of care there is much higher.
Senator Jeannie Shaheen from New Hampshire. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks so much for being with us.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will get rid of that brain fog, and it will allow you to concentrate on tasks at work or at home or in school. Take this every day, drink it with filtered water, and over time, your neuroplasticity will improve, your memory will be quicker, you'll be thinking faster. This is a very powerful neurostack that you should be taking to help with your brain function. Please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. And to boost up your immune system and help with your endocrine system and your brain function, take the following stack. Lignans will help with the immune system and the endocrine system, bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Turmeric will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. And ashwagandha root will help to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. When you do this, you're reducing inflammation, and that helps to boost up your immune system, because chronic inflammation is immunosuppressive. In addition, by bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation, and bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, you're helping the health of your neurons. Because if your neurons are in an inflammatory state, the myelin sheath starts to degrade, and your neurons won't function as properly, and the neuroplasticity will start to recede. The dendritic connections will recede, and you'll think slower. Your memory will start to decline. You don't want that. You want to maintain good health for your brain and reduce that inflammation. Get the ashwagandha root, the turmeric, and the lignans, stack them together. It'll slow down the aging process, help with bringing down inflammation, and boost up that immune system. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, let's go to, I think, a video with Newt Gingrich.
Of the hour, the Trump administration is pushing forward with President Trump's affordability agenda. But new Fox News polls show the American people are souring on the economy. 76% of respondents view national economic conditions as poor. while 60% report poor personal financial situations. I spoke with White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett about it on Sunday. Watch.
We 100% get it. And one of the ways you can think about it, Maria, is that because of inflation and the 4% increase in mortgage rates for the typical home buyer, the mortgage rate, the monthly payment went from about $1,200 to about $2,500 during the Biden administration. And so if you add up the increase in the price of groceries, the 21% that you mentioned, that means that a typical ordinary family had to spend $25,000 more every year just to cover the Biden inflation. And President Trump is closing the gap on that fast. And we've got, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, a big reduction in the deficit. So the macroeconomic effect of inflation is going down as well. And potentially new leadership at the Fed, which is going to cut interest rates. But there's all above approach on affordability, but we understand why people feel like they haven't caught up yet because of the huge hole that was done by Joe Biden.
Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich sounding the alarm in a new Fox News op-ed telling Republicans economic failure means a Democrat takeover in 2026. Joining me now live from Switzerland is the man himself, former House Speaker and Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Newt, it's great to see you this morning. First, I want to get to everything your wife is doing and the reason you are in Switzerland this morning.
Well, she's the ambassador now and deeply involved in trade negotiations and other issues and serving the president and the country, and we're very honored. This is her second time. She was the ambassador of the Vatican 4 years ago, so it's a great experience, and the Swiss have been very, very positive and very much want to have a good relationship with the United States. So Costa's got a lot of work to do, but it's in a very friendly environment.
That is wonderful. Congratulations and best wishes to Ambassador Gingrich. Thank you for that. I want to get your take on everything else in terms of affordability. What's your take on how the Republicans can message that this is actually a priority?
Well, I think that there's a real challenge here. And Republicans, as I've said in my articles, Republicans need to understand that if we have not gotten a dramatically better economy by next July, we have a big, big problem, which could lead to the kind of results that they had in 2018, which could lead to the Democrats suddenly trying to impeach Trump, trying to do everything they can to stop the momentum. So there's a tremendous amount riding on the economy, which is why I so strongly advocated getting the one big beautiful bill done. There are a lot of good things coming down the road, but I would give you an example. The biggest single thing you could do for affordability is pass transparency in health. Health is the average family today, a family of four, is paying about $26,000 a year for health insurance. They're buying a small car every year. That's crazy. And it's going up. And the real issue here is not the fight that we've had in Congress over the COVID-related subsidies. The real issue is how do you get the health system back on track to being affordable? Experts I talk with believe if we had transparency in health costs, we would probably take about 4% of the gross domestic product out of the system. That is a huge amount, which would help us balance the budget, but it would help families. You bring down that $25,000 or $26,000 a year and get it down to $20,000, you just saved them $6,000 a year with that one step. So I think there are things that have to be done. We have to focus on affordability, but it's more than groceries and it's more than gasoline. It's health insurance, it is car insurance, it's home insurance, it's the cost of housing. These are embedded problems, and it's not going to work next year to blame Biden.
Yeah.
Because President Trump's too strong a personality.
That's it. Great points all around. Newt, but I mean, what are you expecting this White House announcement with regard to these costs coming down to be? I mean, do you expect that this will be all encompassing with, like you say, health insurance, car insurance, et cetera?
Well, I don't know if in round one they're going to try to do everything, because I think the president has a strong desire to not have the government shut again.
Right.
So he's going to look for some kind of first step. But it's also notable that House Republicans, most of them, don't want to just throw money away, and they do want to have real reforms. So I think this conversation is going to go on for a couple of weeks, and I don't think it's quite knowable yet
what the final package will be like. I hope it'll be much deeper reforms than just trying to buy off the Democrats with a Band-Aid for a year or two.
All right, we're going to go to another video from Fox talking about how students are moving to the South to go to college. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol is super important. If you're 40 years of age or older, male or female, take this, do some resistance training, and you'll build muscle and maintain muscle. Once you turn 40, you don't produce the genes that you need, but produce the gene expression that you need to build muscle, all right? Myotrol has the polyphenols, the flavonoids, and the lignins that helps with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle. So this is going to reduce the atrophy, all right? Do the resistance training and especially do back muscles to improve your posture. And when you're improving your posture and you're doing that resistance training, you're also creating denser bones, especially for the vertebrae. And by having better posture, you're going to be able to improve your lymphatic flow. You're also going to be able to improve your venous return flow. So that's going to help with your cardiovascular health. Super important to build up your back muscles. If you're an athlete, younger or older, taking Myotrol is going to help with building muscle for your sport. So please take my advice, get the Myotrol, take it every day, do resistance training, and build that muscle. All right? Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost is a supplement that has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. You can read the label on my website. This is a powder. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk, but take it every day, take 1 scoop a day. And by doing this, you are going to have the nutrients you need to slow down the aging process. And it's going to target some systems that are going to help improve your health. It's going to help to improve your heart and your vascular system, help with your brain function, help to build muscle. So it's going to help with your musculature. It's going to improve your metabolism and improve your energy levels. When you take this long term, you're going to notice that you're slowing down the aging process. Within 72 hours, you're going to notice that you have more vitality and more energy to do things. So take this every day and stack it with different supplements. Now, this is one of the pillars for my anti-aging protocol. The first foundation is to take the multivitamin and the probiotic. Then there are 4 pillars on top of that foundation. The first pillar is to take the Max 35 or the cleanse to boost up the immune system. Second pillar is the C60 to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is the stack of lignans, ashwagandha root, and turmeric. Fourth pillar is to take the Boomer Boost. When you do that, you're slowing down the aging process and boosting up your immune system. You're soaking up free radicals. You're going to have lots of energy. It's a very powerful stack if you do that. Please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. You can just take the Boomer Boost and you'll get many benefits from it, but you'll get super benefits by taking that anti-aging protocol. Please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. And omega-3. Omega-3 is super important for your cardiovascular health. Why? It brings down inflammation, helps your lipid profile, helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. When you do that, you have less plaque formation. In addition, omega-3 will prevent over-clotting of your red blood cells. This is super important to take. Do some resistance training and some cardiovascular training. But it's a holistic approach. By taking the proper supplements and helping with your heart and doing proper diet and exercise, you're going to improve your cardiovascular health and fitness. So please go to my store and get the omega-3. Very high quality. All these supplements are very high quality. So if you don't want to do the stack that I mentioned with the foundation and all the other pillars, another great stack is take the omega-3 for your cardiovascular health, take the Boomer Boost that will help with the brain function, musculature, metabolism, energy levels, and also cardiovascular health. And take the Myotrol to help with the muscles, to maintain and to build more musculature. This is a pretty powerful stack right here. So there's many ways to do this, all right? And you get huge benefits. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get healthy. We're getting to the end of the year. Do a New Year's resolution, or if you care about someone and you want them to get healthy, get the products, stack them and give them as gifts. They work. But you have to do it. You can't just know. I'm giving you all this free information on like how to get healthy, right? But you got to do it. And that's the difference between people that are talkers and actual doers, right? Now, I'm in my 50s. Now, I've been taking anti-aging protocol and tweaking it for a long time, going all the way back to when I was 16 years old. All right. Even if you've never been healthy in your life, you can benefit from the information and the products that I offer. And if we have a society that is more fit, we'll be more productive. And not just that, our healthcare costs will go down. The answer isn't government. The answer is us looking in the mirror and taking responsibility. And by doing that, you will reduce your healthcare costs.
A large number of students are shifting away from prestigious Northeastern schools in the Ivy League and are now looking to enroll in Southern colleges. SEC schools have seen a 91% spike in admissions of students from Northeastern states since 2014. Students cite warmer weather, better sports, and a more relaxed experience as reasons for the shift. And as the competition intensifies at these Southern schools, the acceptance rates are tightening up. Schools including Auburn, Clemson, and Emory are.
It's interesting. Some of the people that I have met that were at Harvard, their undergrad was in the South. Many people that I've known, just over my overall travels of life, they did their undergrad in the South. So it's interesting, the dynamic that's happening here.
Harder to get into thanks to the influx of out-of-state applicants. All right, of course, I have to go to our Southern Belle first. So you went to University of South Carolina. Talk to us about what that was like and what you see in these new students and their attraction to it.
Well, I started off at Florida State University because I really wanted to go out of state for a different experience. And Mom and Dad said I could if I got a little bit of scholarship to cover the out of state. So that, by the grace of God, happened. So I was down in Florida State in your area. Loved it. It was going to be an orthodontist. Then when I changed my major to journalism, I transferred to South Carolina. It was the best decision because the journalism school there is so phenomenal. Your last semester, and if you're interested in journalism or your children are, the last semester we actually produced a TV show. So we were actually doing it. We weren't just.
Don't go into journalism. Go into engineering. Go into business. The most important thing you could do for your family and for your society is get a skill. I don't care what it is. Get a skill and build a business. I don't care if it's clothing making, shoe making, engineering, whatever, build a business. If you don't build businesses, the society isn't productive. We don't need more talking heads. I mean, get fucking real.
Learning about how to write press releases for PR or how to write a script.
Think about it.
We were actually.
She wanted to be an orthodontist. That means she had to know a lot of math and a lot of science. You had to go through your pre-med program, right? Or a pre-dental program. So like pre-med and pre-dental are basically the same thing, right? So when I did my pre-med at Fordham, I had many students that were wanting to go into medicine or in dentistry. But the thing is that it's a lot of work. You got to learn a lot of stuff, and it's very stressful, and it's very competitive. Journalism, not so much.
sitting, behind the desk or doing the weather, doing the directing jobs. We had to rotate. Great education, great journalism school, but also.
So does our society need journalists, or does our society need chemists? Do we need engineers, mechanical, chemical, electrical, nuclear, robotic engineers, cross disciplines, physicists? Don't we need those more than we need journalists?
Football, and I grew up going to all those games. The tailgating is so much fun. The cute Southern boys, that was I like that too. The Christian aspect of it. We were in church every Sunday. My faith became so strong. The sorority life was great, and a lot of people poo-poo that up here up north, but I had a great experience. That's how I found the Lord. So I just overall, my parents were there. It was just a great experience. I understand culturally, it's cheaper. The beach is there. Charleston was 2 hours away. The mountains are 2 hours away. Everyone's nice. I-95 is there. We have a small airport if you're flying in and out. It was just a great overall experience.
Yeah. So, all right, next, our Florida girls. So talk to us about that at Kiel and what that's like down there.
So born and raised in Florida, loved it. FSU's great school. My husband went there. My whole family went to UF or MSU. My dad, Mississippi State University. So they're all SECs.
Yeah.
I left and I go to the Northeast. I go to Georgetown. I go to Harvard. I loved my time there. Being in DC, getting to intern in DC, being at these great institutions. There were some liberal lunatics, of course, on the campus, but by and large had great experience. But I understand the appeal of some of these SEC schools. I understand people wanting a return to normalcy, the values that you just mentioned. Places like Vanderbilt, another great school. Yeah. So yeah. I hope the institutions.
So I think what's happening, and this is my observation of the people that did come from Florida or South Carolina or even North Carolina, even Texas. They're typically more conservative compared to, let's say, Harvard or even Fordham. So there's definitely a difference between conservative to liberal student body, that's for sure. I think there's also a worth ethic that I noticed. But not with all, because some people that did go to Florida, they went to party school and they didn't, the discipline wasn't there. But in large, I would say that there's more discipline. And I'll tell you, I think that there's a little bit more, I think they're just more open, easier to get along with versus some of these other individuals or students that are coming from the East, the Northeast, where they have a chip on their shoulder maybe, where it's harder to become friends with. But there is something about a conservatism in the South that I think the country needs. It goes back into this whole idea of God, country, and family. Now, you got to remember, we have the First Amendment, and that First Amendment is also freedom of religion. But we also have to pay attention to freedom from religion, too. There is a tendency for certain religions to proselytize. And if you keep on proselytizing, you're going to turn people off, right? So religion is a personal thing. And I think that we need it, but I don't believe that we should be proselytizing it. We have freedom of religion and from religion. And that's very important. But this idea of God, country, and family, where you have some spirituality in your life and some moral foundation, you have a strong affinity to your country, so you're patriotic. And when you have that, you have an affinity for your community. You want to do good for your community, right? You don't want to steal from Foot Locker, right? And family. Family is the cornerstone of society. So if you have those three pillars, you're going to be a well-rounded individual, and you're going to have a productive society if many people in your society have those three pillars. The problem that we're seeing in urban environments like New York or Chicago or LA, is that those pillars are fractured. There is no spirituality or very little, so the moral fiber is eroded. They don't have an affinity for country, so they don't have a sense of duty or patriotism, and they don't have a sense of family unit. A lot of people are single. They don't want to have kids or, whatever. And what happens is society doesn't prosper. And you start seeing issues with certain races within the society that is less well off socially, economically, that start to steal, start to break into buildings, start to cause crime, push people onto the train, or light people on fire, or this is not hyperbole. These are things that have happened in New York City almost on a daily basis. The problem here is that we need a country that has a stronger affinity to conservative values. The reason why people moved away from those conservative values was because you had an overzealot group of people proselytizing. And this is the reason why I say that the freedom of religion and from religion. So as the pendulum is moving away from liberalism and towards conservatism, the conservatives need to pay attention that if you overdo it, you'll get that pendulum moving towards liberalism again. Now, in terms of Charlie Kirk and the memorial service, that memorial service was way overdone, and it was nothing but some sort of like proselytizing Christian event. Remember our First Amendment, freedom for religion, or freedom of religion, I should say, but implicitly is also freedom from religion. Don't overdo it. This country needs conservatism. This country needs more affinity towards spirituality and patriotism and family. And religion can give you a foundation for that. But you should not proselytize. Proselytize will destroy this movement that's moving towards conservatism. Unfortunately, you're going to have a lot of Christians out there that have this desire to proselytize. And it's just going to turn people off, and they're going to move to liberalism again.
Make me who I am today. Continue to support conservatives. I felt very supported by the staff on campus, because if you don't, what you're going to see are places like Alabama, 85% acceptance rate, now 46%. Clemson, 52% acceptance, now 38%. Wow. People love these SEC schools.
Yeah. All right. Coming from the fighting elite. So talk to us about, first of all, I don't know about you, but coming from the Pac-12, I feel like we got absolutely the short end of the stick with media coverage and definitely officials' calls. It kills me. Now we're in the Big Ten, whatever. But I definitely feel like, and now I feel like I was asking you a question, I about myself. But it was that I feel like, so I went to University of Washington, and it was awesome. I had the best Greek life experience ever, massive football, everything was awesome. Went to the Rose Bowl my senior year, was fantastic, beautiful grounds, whatever. And it was really, really hard to get in back then from out of state, which I was. The academics were superior. But now I definitely see that there is a massively woke component to admissions and to things. It is still this top-notch school for so many technology and medicine and so many things. But there's sort of that insidious tendril. There's the ink blot in the well. I think I'm mixing metaphors. And so now I feel like for kids that are like, well, can I just be normal for a while? Or do I have to be like, well, my pronouns are this and this, and did I offend you? Am I going to get canceled? Has that sort of infected school that we came from?
I think it has, and it's the Illini. They'll yell at me if I don't.
Dang it!
Don't correct you.
Illini.
They're fighting Illini, but I think really the issue is that even these schools, and I have friends that have children there now. I won't shout out to them and embarrass them, but I have friends who have kids there now, and they send me things like what these professors are saying or putting up on screens and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really happening in our Midwestern schools. And so I think a lot of Midwestern kids that I know are going to places like Ole Miss and Auburn and Tennessee, and they're just leaving Chicago because they don't want to be told they're bad. Remember, this is a group of kids that grew up during COVID. They were in 8th grade, high school during COVID. Now they're deciding where to go to high school. They're in their first or second years of college. And they want to feel normal. They do not want to be browbeaten. They do not want to be yelled at for who they are. They do not want to get bad grades because they're not jumping on board. I mean, my friend's son at Illinois has actually said, I have to think about the way that I respond to things for purposes of my grades. I mean, so here's a kid who's holding his own, right, in himself, but when he's putting his
And so
school,
if you're being programmed in college to be thinking that way, that you have to worry about pronoun usage and offending people, they're programming you for the corporate world to just give in. So this is a control mechanism. This is why I keep on saying, get a skill. I don't care how you do it, but get a skill and build a business. Get a skill and build a business. That should be your life mission. If you're younger and you're listening, get a skill. It could be through formal training or self-training, but get a skill and build a business.
there, he's got to do it in a way that is pacifying what the educators are asking for. So I think that's why you have people going south.
Yeah, I love what a perfect representation we have, or like a deeply, like the breadth of what we have for the different geography and also the types of schools. So Charlie, you went to a small private school, you were saying.
Yeah, I couldn't have gotten into any, even when the acceptance rates were really pretty broad, I couldn't have gotten into any of these.
You were a bad student.
No,
I don't believe that.
No. You're heckling me.
You were not bad.
Are you kidding me? I was the worst.
No, you were. You're like the genius that gets bad grades and everyone is like, here you go.
I was genuinely a terrible student, and for good reason. No, but I do think that a lot of this started during COVID, when you had all of these severe lockdowns across the country, and people would turn on TV and they would watch the SEC football games, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, nobody's wearing masks. They have their shirts off, they're wearing face paint, they're having fun, nobody's, and then it sort of went snowballed from there, and they're, by the way, they're completely right about it. You know, you get, it is a lot more open in terms of, you know, you can say something stupid and it's not going to get you canceled. You can experiment with things the way you're supposed to at that age, and you learn things. And I think it's a much healthier, a healthier environment. And then also you get a good value, because a lot of those places are less expensive than if you're going to go to whatever Brown or Columbia up here.
Yeah. With a side of protests and you know, all
that's
that
what they
stuff.
see. They see that on TikTok, right? If you're looking at schools, they're seeing that you can't get into your classroom. So they're saying, why go there?
Right.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube.
It's about God, country, and family, and getting a skill. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will help with your cellular metabolism, increase your energy levels, help with the health of your mitochondria, and to protect your neurons. Protecting your neurons is super important if you're age 40 or older. Please go to my store and get the vitamin B complex. And Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula will allow you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep per night. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to get those cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep that will allow you to detoxify your central nervous system, consolidate memory, and you'll be well rested. When you do that regularly, you slow down the aging process. And guess what? Your immune system also improves. And collagen. Collagen supplement has the typical amino acid profile shown on the screen here. This is very powerful, very high quality collagen. Do resistance training. And by taking the collagen, it's going to help with the bone density. It's going to help with the health of your joints and your cartilage, your musculature, your skin, your nails, and your hair. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg here. I think they're talking about Bitcoin.
The stock market overall.
Okay, so that's where things stand for Bitcoin. What about the infrastructure that's really popped up around Bitcoin and crypto overall? You have a lot of crypto companies applying for bank charters and wanting to become more like TradFi institutions, even as they say they don't want to be banks and presumably don't want to be regulated like banks. How do they move forward when a big part of the crypto narrative is struggling?
I think, listen, I think there'll be a lot of competition. I have to tell you, like Visa, MasterCard, they're all jumping on the whole stablecoin bandwagon. A lot of banks are doing the same and so on and so forth. So I don't know if all of a sudden this is going to be a free fall. I think where stablecoins is going to basically make a very big difference is in cross-border payment. And there's no doubt. I mean, that's going to be a big deal because it's just simply cheaper. That's why all the major mainstream traditional financial institutions are already going down this path. But I think outside that, it's not clear what this basically means, because if you think about this, I mean, to me, what is very striking is how much gold has gone up and how much Bitcoin's gone down. And yet people think of Bitcoin as a digital gold. And yet, I'll tell you the big difference between gold and Bitcoin is that gold is benefiting from reserve diversification. I mean, there's no question. I think there have been a lot of reports about the fact that, China said that they bought 20 tons of gold so far this year, but unofficially, they might have bought as much as 100 tons. And this is probably true about a lot of central banks because they see this current geopolitical realignment around the world as a reason to get out of U.S. Treasury, U.S. dollar into gold. Clearly, these central banks have no incentive whatsoever to get into Bitcoin because, in a way, Bitcoin can be confiscated, as we've discovered recently. So I think from that point of view, even if you're talking about safe haven, geopolitical, whatever, turmoil that's benefiting alternative to the U.S. dollar, I think it's very clear that West gold looks, you can make a very compelling case for gold. For that reason, I think Bitcoin is certainly right now, it's difficult to basically make a strong case for Bitcoin right now.
Okay. Then you look at the altcoins, anything that's not Bitcoin, and Ether and Solana, they're seen as beneficiaries of the build out of, as being the backbone for a lot of these stable coins, the infrastructure behind it. Are they in a better position then, David?
No. I think I look at these coins as essentially a high beta play on Bitcoin. So it's difficult for me to get too excited about them because at the end of the day, what we need to basically, what it really comes down to is what do you think about Bitcoin and all the other basically coins that are not pegged to the U.S. dollar? What do you think about these in terms of store value? I think that's what it really comes down to. So I think from that point of view, obviously, as you said at the outset, a lot of it has to do with what the Fed does next. Now, my personal view is that when Powell pushed back on the December cut a couple of weeks ago, it was not because he's worried about the inflation, but more likely he's worried about the stock market bubble. I believe that, the Fed shares my concerns about the AI bubble. Obviously, the Fed would never come out and say, wow, this is a bubble. But I think they definitely don't want to become an accomplice to the bubble, and they don't want to blow more air into the bubble. I think this is the reason why they are uncommittal when it comes to a December cut. So I think from that point of view, whether December cut will happen or not obviously matters a great deal for both Bitcoin and the stock market. I'm assuming right now that the stock market keeps rallying. I think that reduces the chance of a cut. We really need probably another 7% drop in the stock market for the Fed to jump on a cut in December.
Well, that's why a lot of people say the stock market is like the Fed's unofficial third mandate. David, always appreciate getting you to join us and spend some time with us. David Wu is founder and strategist of Unbound Retail.
Bitcoin, altcoins, all those, it's not a store of value. It's not. You can't have a store of value when you have high volatility. It's impossible. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help with your immune system, but also your brain function. Magnesium helps with the efficacy of vitamin D3. Take this every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water, especially during the winter season. Boost up that immune system. Take the magnesium and zinc every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Take 1 dose in the morning, take 1 dose in the evening if you're not feeling well. If you are feeling okay, take 1 dose each day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. And if you spend $100 or more on any order, you get a free gift until supplies last. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. This last video that I'm going to do, this is talking about a professor that was at Harvard and why they left. All right? And I think it's really important to pay attention here. Now, Harvard has always been on the wrong side of everything until they were forced to be on the right side. But then what happens is that once they are on the right side, positive things happen for the country, right? So don't assume that America has failed, all right? America will shine through this libtard era that we're in, right? There are conservatives within Harvard. There are conservatives within Yale and these other institutions. There are conservatives within other universities that are not Ivy League or Ivy League Plus. And that's where the light is. That's where the new renaissance is going to be born from. So to demonize all these schools and assume that it's just a bastion of a bunch of ultra libs, no. There are students that do subscribe to this God, country, and family concept. All right? And they see the problem. But this ship is big, and it takes time to turn it. Right? But the conservatives at these schools are going to right the ship and right the United States. You just have to be patient.
I met there. When I entered the university, I prepared to dedicate my life to the humanities, especially the teaching of literature. Literature provides a template for life and order for the human experience. It teaches us we're not alone. It rouses our conscience and dilates our moral capacity. It furnishes a vocabulary for the motions of inner life. It sharpens our attention to the world and to others, and it wakes things up that are in us. And it often requires the concession of moral imperatives, those imaginative laws that hold together the moral worlds of poems and novels. Literature expands our capacity to communicate, to problem solve within a democratic society, to celebrate and to lament civically. And I think more importantly, literature, especially poetry, facilitates a spiritual growth that helps cultivate the faculty of listening, a faculty that we need to cultivate, especially right now. I wrote my dissertation on spiritual poetics, and I wanted to take seriously the spiritual aspect of poetry. That's what I did at Harvard. The academic study of literature is expert at examining literature from all kinds of angles: the historical, the new historical, the biographical, the deconstructive, the political, the sexual, the broadly theoretical. And all of these perspectives can be helpful and are sometimes necessary. And as a young graduate student, I came across an article by Professor Dennis Taylor, who taught at Boston College. And in his article, he wrote, "There is a need in our time for religious interpretations that are substantial enough to enter into a productive and competitive relation with the reigning critical discourses. The need for religious literary criticism is not only reflective of a present scholarly void, but also comes out of a spiritual hunger felt by many teachers and students for a way of discussing the intersections of their own spiritual lives with what they read." And when I read that, I thought, that's what I would like to do. And this article was published in 1996, but there still lacks a serious consideration of the spiritual dynamics of poetry. So I wanted to address this by showing how many lyric poems formally encode or communicate a spiritual and sometimes a religious experience through the shape of sound and meaning. Helen Wimler called lyric poems acts of mobile consciousness and thinking on the move, as she described it. And oftentimes, those states of consciousness are in the domain of what is often called the spiritual. And I wanted to provide a way for the Academy to talk about spiritual poetics in a way that didn't sound naive to them. So my dissertation took Wordsworth's poetry as a case study for this. Wordsworth is the poet of spiritual growth, and my work showed how his poetry can formally enact, or how it often formally enacts and reproduces spiritual experiences in the readers themselves. So I hope to take this method further in my future work, and I am working on another book. And I hope to put this into scholarship and writing by applying these methods that I developed in my dissertation to other poets. But at this moment, this is not a world in which an academic or an academic humanist can easily survive. However, my online school of poetry called Versed has supported me, has grown to support me financially, spiritually, and intellectually in a way that the Academy will not at this time, and perhaps cannot. My online school has valued my work, and many of you who have been watching this channel and following it have valued that too, and I've discovered that my vocation as an academic and a teacher doesn't end when I leave the Academy, but it is fulfilled, and perhaps better fulfilled, outside the Academy at this moment. I've been teaching poetry to mostly non-academic readers online on this school for about 2 years now, and it has made up some of the best experiences I've ever had in teaching literature. And what I've discovered there is just this beautiful flourishing of kind, poetic, intellectual, and creative readers. Lovers of poetry from all over the world come together to watch recorded lectures or attend live meetings to read and discuss poetry there and in the chat rooms. And it's a beautifully diverse and sensitive cohort. And when I look at that community of kind, insightful, curious, intensely interested readers, my friends on the Burst, I'm often struck by the magic of what is growing there. They remind me again and again that no single work of literature can be exhausted by one voice. Even for me, the pursuit of virtue and truth is always enriched through a diversity of perspectives when readers leverage each other's insights and when they share what they know and what other students, and often I, do not know. And I love what Reverend Mark Oakley once said about discussing poetry, which is often many times more valuable than a lecture. And I thank my friends Rami and Catherine for showing me this lecture. I've got it linked down below by Oakley. And this is what he says about the value of discussion and what we've been doing online. To read a poem together and then talk about it is an amazing experience. You each give your response, and you hear things and see things suddenly as others speak that you had never known or even thought about. And as all these meanings are placed together, we end up with one big meaning that no one had at all. All are enlarged, challenged, equal. All end up usually hungry for more. We start to wonder how humanity might work if we cared less about making a point than about making a difference in this way. And as the car is driven home, or the walk across the park the next day occurs, that poem is still doing its work of settling, unsettling, casting colors on our sepia-toned life. That is a great mercy. End of quotation. Beautiful quotation. It perfectly expresses what we do on Versed. And teaching interested readers has shown me that poetry can be studied and lived, and that the most marvelous thing I can do right now is to help nurture this, to gather readers into a community where truth and beauty might be pursued together through the study of and the creation of literature. Many of the community members are actually writing their own poems and novels, and in this way, imagining more. So I was happy to participate briefly in the life of the Academy, and may yet, again, one day. The Academy is a great gift to a nation, but right now it needs reform in order to fulfill its sacred mission once again. And I think it can and will be reformed. But for now, I'm called elsewhere. I plan to keep working on my 2 book projects and attending conferences where I can, and will continue publishing some free content here on YouTube. But for now, I feel like I'm leaving the tower to go tend a garden. And there's great excitement in that for me. So thank you to everyone on YouTube who has followed this channel over the past 3 years, who has subscribed and commented with encouragement. thank you. Your support has enabled me to keep teaching poetry in a world that is increasingly hostile to the arts. At this time in my life, I'm upheld both financially and spiritually by those of you who have supported this channel, and especially the poets and readers of poetry who have bought subscriptions on Verse. So to everyone on YouTube and on Verse, I'm looking forward to whatever comes next. Thanks for being along for the ride, and until next time.
Scott 1000 lasts 2 times longer. Get more with Scott.
T-Mobile's Guide to Moving Day. Step 1, get T-Mobile 5G home internet with 2-day free shipping. Step 2, get online in 15 minutes. Step 3, unpack, maybe tomorrow. Make your house a home on day 1. Get T-Mobile 5G home internet for just $50 a month.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin C and magnesium. This will help with your skin, your immune system, and your brain function. Super important. Make sure you drink it with filtered water, and especially take this during the winter season to boost up that immune system. Use discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last, and you're going to need it, especially for the winter. So please, go to my store, get the great supplements that I offer, share the links, and please help support the work that I do. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.